mitigation, and preparedness strategies. These next series of examples are mitigation and preparedness strategies for your operations of your business. So if we look at the list that we have here, we have emergency telecommuting, also known as remote working. So when we first generated these lists and we were doing workshops all over the province with mitigation preparedness strategies, we had talked about remote working, which is interesting because now with COVID, everybody can do remote working. We have tools like Zoom, but back then we didn't have things like that. But businesses that rely on employees and maybe they have to travel some distances, if they put in place beforehand tools like Zoom and train their staff and given their staff resources at home like laptops, if something happened like a pandemic, they would have no problems working remotely and they wouldn't skip a beat. That's a perfect example of an operational strategy you can implement, and it's a little bit of preparedness and it helps to mitigate the risk. You can also do stuff like alternative suppliers. So if all of your flour, if you run a bakery, comes from one supplier, what you can do is you can actually think in advance, okay, if something happens and I can't access flour from that one supplier, why not take some time right now and generate a list of other suppliers that might be able to get you those critical supplies you need to run your business? Keep that list on the side, maybe even put in place agreements that are basically fallback or emergency agreements so you can use them if you need to, instead of scrambling in the heat of the moment with a hazard that's on your doorstep. Same thing with alternative locations. Classic example, if you run a warehouse, your warehouse is out of commission because of flooding, burst water pipe, why not find other warehouses that you can rent in a situation where you need to, where you can quickly activate, go in there, use that space for a temporary period of time, and not miss that key revenue that we'd be generating during that time period. Again, it's just taking a little bit of time now to think about these sort of things that are critical to your business and lining up alternatives and backups should you need them. It goes on. We even have emergency assistance agreements. Very similar kind of idea, but maybe you have a partner or another business that's similar to yours. Maybe you actually decide that you're not going to compete with each other in an emergency situation. Maybe you're actually going to work in an agreement that if something happens and they lose access to their oven and you've got a working oven, that they can use your oven in the off hours, like maybe through the night. So that way they can keep their business going, and vice versa. If something happens to you, you now have a backup. You can work out agreements like this in advance, so that way, again, if something happens to your business, you can still generate income and you're not gonna have that downtime if you don't think of these things beforehand.